All right, quick rate. Things are going well, but whoever says that woodworking is not a workout has never had to lift 8 foot long, I don't know, 70-pound boards endlessly through that planer. By endlessly, I mean like a dozen times, but damn, it's a workout. In the last 48 hours, I produced all these planer shavings. That's how much wood has been sliced off a 32nd of an inch at a time off these boards. I'm fucking tired. Yeah, this is fun. I still like it. It's a workout though. I was both afraid and was expecting this to happen, so we got to way forward here. But here's what happens when you run something through the thickness planer. What it does is it makes it a consistent thickness all the way down here. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't guarantee that the side is perpendicular to the top. So if you see this, you can see it's not perpendicular to the top. I'm trying a technique. I am securing a board to the bed here so that it runs it through at an angle, and you can see it's actually doing a pretty good job. So this side is getting very square, whereas this side is still out of square. So I got to keep taking material off and get the entire top square. And that's how I'll get this one piece completely square all the way around on all 4 sides. And then I've got 3 more pieces to go. So it'll be a little bit tedious, but we'll get it. Good news is that first board I showed is the worst one. Second one was decent. This is pretty good. It's going to be close enough for me to glue up the 2 pieces. Try to don't knock this over. And then I can use a hand plane once it's all glued up to flatten it out. Here we go. So I'm going to turn the lights down in a moment here and show you something, but I was initially a little bit worried about this because I was gluing 2 halves together, and you can see the hairline gap all the way through there. In order to have an effective glue up, that needs to be flush, clamped together as well as possible. And it won't be strong unless it's a nice solid connection here, but I've got a flashlight and I'm going to do the flashlight test here. Basically, I'm going to have the flashlight above here, and if I could see light below it, then that means that the seam is not tight enough. And as I walk through here, you can don't see any light beneath of it, which means that this should be okay. It's clamped well enough together. You can't see what's going on here, where it's maybe the bottom half is getting glued, but not the top. It still makes it'll be strong enough for the purposes of this table, but aesthetically I can make that work. Here's some good news. Took the clamps off of what is going to be 2 legs for the console table. It went fine. It's nice and sturdy. In other words, it was a good glue up, and I've just finished, or just put together to clamp up the glue up for the top. So this is a little bit over 8 feet long. This will be the top, and then as I cut 2 legs out of that, you got a finger joint at the ends, and it'll make a nice little upside down U shape. So come along nicely. Just gotta wait another 24 hours, and then assembly and the finishing process. So here we go. So you know you've got a really good glue up when you shave off an incredibly thin piece from the very end. You can see all the boards are glued up here, and the end pieces are glued together pretty well. So this goes to tell you that this is a pretty good glue up. Right now it's breaking not on the glue itself, but just on the wood. So the glue is still the strongest part here. That's how I know this is a good glue up. It just crumbles everywhere except the seam. I did this process for an outdoor bench. I was doing it while there was glue in the joint. I learned my lesson there. I'm not doing that anymore because this is a very slow and tedious process, which is not great when the glue is curing all the while. So I think what I'm going to do with this is, as I clamp this joint together with no glue, maybe in the last 1/8 of an inch, I'll put a dab of glue around any exposed parts that are remaining, and that should hold it together. I mean, there's a mechanical strength to this because all the weight is going to load down vertically on these actual legs. So really I just need something to hold it and keep it from pivoting. I may put some dowels in from underneath to help keep it from pivoting as well, but yeah, slow going, but getting these legs together. All right, I might need to strategize and regroup. This is softwood 2x4s, and softwood's gonna do what softwood's gonna do, which is bend, squeeze, twist a lot more than a hardwood would. And I'm having real trouble closing this gap here. Got a bunch of clamps. I already broke one clamp because I put so much leverage on it. I think what I might need to do is screw a hole in from the top here, the very long screw, I guess it'd be in the top of this board, screw it in into this board and let it pull it tight, which means I need to get it flush in this direction as well first. So a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. I think I'm gonna call it for tonight and think about this on how to do this well. Okay. Well, I'm being very persistent with this and I'm making progress. So I got one leg, the top, another leg, and they're more or less up high vertically as they need to be. Now I'm trying to put the legs close together and close this gap. The way I'm doing that I've got a clamp that is connected to another clamp that's connected to another clamp. So in effect, I've got 3 clamps that are acting as one clamp across 8 feet, 5 inches, I think it was. And I'm cranking down on it, trying to get it to inch closer together. By inch, I mean millimeters by millimeters. And then it won't let me go anymore. And I'll take my rubber mallet and beat the hell out of it and try and move it another 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter. It'll move just enough to allow me to bear down on the clamps a little bit more. Rinse and repeat endlessly until it gets to where I need it to go. So that's what tonight is looking like. All right, I think my persistence has turned into stubbornness. I can give this one more shot. This goes up into there. And what I'm going to do is round off these corners so that they don't dig in if it's slightly too wide. I'm also going to gouge out little spaces in each one of these fingers, each one of these teeth here. But I won't gouge out where you'll be able to see that gouge. So from the top, it'll look flat, but in the middle it'll be a little bit hollowed out. That'll be less friction as I pound it in. So let's see if this works. So here's what I mean by gouging it out. I have chiseled out basically this intersection right here, and I've left the very top of it, the original width or depth, and the very bottom of it. So when I put this thing in here, I will still see this is at the correct width, but it'll be carved out in the middle, less friction that way. One other thing I'm doing here is because at the very ends, there's a little bit of, I might get stuck right there. I've also carved off the corners here, so they are rounded corners. Now it'll both help when I push it in this way, but also if there's a little bit left over in here, it'll fill up that empty space in theory, and hopefully this will work. Hopefully the next story you see is me celebrating that this has been successful, so stay tuned. All right, I think I got it well enough that I can work with it. It is in there. You see this is protruding, that's on purpose, but the gaps are very close to being closed up. It's close enough where I could add shims or use other techniques to make it look like there's no gap at all. So we are really getting there. And I'm going to secure it. And after I secure it, it gets nice and 90 degrees to the top. Then I'm gonna take a flush trim saw and cut off the excess, and this will look like a nice, well done corner here, and then repeat the process over there. Quick note on how I'm going to secure this. Where there are gaps, I've put a little bit of glue and you'll let it seep in there. That glue on its own will not be enough to keep this entire leg from pivoting if there's a lot of stress put on it. For example, when we move it into the client's basement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill holes up here, upward at an angle, at a diagonal, and I'm going to put dowels in there. So this will have little dowels kind of going this way and this way, but it's all going to be underneath, and yeah, it'll help secure it so that it doesn't pivot. All right, making progress. Cut off the excess. I just got the gaps left over, and then I'm filling the gaps. Fortunately, I have the perfect wood for filling those gaps, and it is the offcuts. So what I do is I cut off a little wedge shape, and I put it right in there, along with a little bit of glue, pound it in, and then I will sand it flush, and it'll look like there's no gap at all. This is good. So 48 hours ago, it was looking a little rough. This is looking really good right now. Check this out. Get nice and flush. Got the gaps filled. You can see where I filled up the gaps, and because I'm pointing them out, they're a little bit more obvious, but I bet if you were just glancing at this thing, they want it to stand out immediately. Same thing up here. I got little plugs in here, tended to match the grain, but this is looking pretty good. So pretty happy with what we have going on here. All right, I've got the first coat done of stain. A little bit of wood education here. The stain will appear darker where the stain is able to penetrate deeper. So it's darker every other board here because every other board is exposing end grain. And the end grain is basically exposing a straw-like structure within the wood. And because it's a straw-like structure, the stain is able to penetrate down that straw and go deeper and therefore make it darker. So that's why you get every other pattern here of darker and lighter stain color. Sometimes you get a little bit of blotchiness here and a little bit here. That can also arise because maybe I didn't do a good enough job sanding. In this case, it's fine from a sanding perspective. Sometimes wood is just going to be wood, and it's just going to do something different there. I can't really explain why that particular board at that particular section is a little bit darker. Same with right here, but overall, holistically, this is looking really good though. This morning I'm going to fix a mistake I made, which is right here. I had another video about blotchy stain, and that's not what this is. What this is I had 2 pieces, 6 pieces here and 7 or so pieces here, and I glued them together and used wood glue in the middle to basically create wood putty on the spot and just smooth out that seam. The issue is I left a very thin film of wood glue on the surface, which meant that when I applied the stain couldn't penetrate, again, because there's a thin film of wood glue. So I have to sand it all the way down to the bare wood, down below the film of wood glue, and then reapply preconditioner and stain, and that's how I'm going to fix this little blotchy mess right here. All right, sanding this down, the entire side. I forgot to mention in the last video, I need to sand the entire side because when I add a second coat of stain, if I only sanded the middle, there may be areas where you see at the very edge where I applied 1 coat versus 2 coat, and more or less, if I want to make an invisible edge from the before and after here, I had to sand all the way to the edge because you don't really notice when there's a color change right at the very corner of the board here. The other trick here is how do I understand whether I have gotten down to the bare wood here. Try different tests, pencil test, put some water on it to see if the color's any different. I'm gonna sand this one more time with 120 grit, get rid of the pencil marks. This is one way of doing that, is just making an even pencil mark all the way around and then sanding it off, and we'll see if we can get this down to where we need it to be. All right, time for the water test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on this seam, I don't see any difference in color. Like it's a good alternating grain pattern here, which tells me that the water is able to penetrate into the wood, which also tells me in theory the stain should penetrate into the wood. Hope that's right. We will find out the fun way. Here we go. Okay, this is looking so much better. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This seam right here is where it used to be a big blotchy mess. I don't see anything. I think it looks great. So definitely glad I took the time. It only took about an hour or so to come in here, sand it down, and reapply another coat. All right, check it out. Got the 4th coat on, 4th and final coat. We're looking pretty good.